My name is Robin Gianis. I'm an artist and an art teacher, and I've been living on the east end of Long Island since 1986. I came out here when I finished college at Sarah Lawrence, and came out and lived with my ex-husband's family for the first few years and fell in love with the beauty of the nature here. I live in East Hampton on 3 Mile Harbor Road with my 2 adult children and my partner Aurelio Torres and our beautiful dog and cat. And I love to make art. Remember. Okay, so I am one of those people who, as early as I can remember, felt that I was an artist. I remember in kindergarten identifying with drawing, and through early elementary school I would draw horses for my friends, and then I would write their names in bubble letters, and I just identified as an artist very early on. It was something that I was good at and that it didn't really take much effort as a child. It was something that I loved, and it was something that I was very easily passionate about. So from an early age I was an artist, and I went to school and I went through high school loving art. I did not go to an arts high school. I went to a more academic, sports-oriented high school, but I still was very much involved in art to the degree that I could. When I went to college, I did study at Sarah Lawrence College, which is in Bronxville, New York, and that was instrumental because I was able to be surrounded by a very strong arts community, and I was able to develop my craft. However, once I graduated from college, I then became involved in working in other capacities. So I had always wanted to pursue art, but it really wasn't until I was in my mid-30s that I had gone back to school to become an art teacher, to get a master's degree, and I took up ceramics as part of that program, because one of my professors had said that the most important thing she could think of was that I knew how to teach ceramics, because she felt that was like the magical element for public school. So I learned ceramics when I was about 35 years old, and I completely fell in love with ceramics. And that became my art of choice from that point on. Never before. No sculpture. I had only worked on paper. So from the time I was 35, I began to explore ceramics. And indeed, ceramics has been the magical element for my teaching. It's what I'm really, I think, good at, and it's what I believe my students get the most passionate about, because I think that my passion is contagious, and it's a treat to work with clay and to work with 3-dimensional qualities. And there's also this sort of magical evolution that happens with ceramics, because it goes from being in your hand to being fired in a kiln and then glazed, which is the type of paint that we use that gives it a glassy finish or a matte finish, and then it's fired again. And when the process is complete, the work it's hard to imagine what it will look like. It's a surprise. There's the element of surprise and magic in that, and it's always sort of an awesome experience to open up a kiln. And so I am very grateful for ceramics in my life as a teacher and as an artist, and it's my passion. It's what I love to do the most. I could spend many, many hours every day doing it. If I could, I would. Some days I do. So that's how I came to be. And I've done other types of art as well. I use my ceramic remnants, my broken pieces, tiles. I use found pieces of ceramic to create mosaics, and I have mosaics all over my yard in the garden, and I have mosaics on a lot of my artwork also. But the mosaics is sort of it's just sort of a byproduct in some ways of the ceramics that I really love to do, which is hand building. You know, I do use a potter's wheel rarely. It's not what I prefer, but I prefer to do everything just with my best tools right here, my two hands. I love working with clay because it's all natural elements. It's sand and silt and silica, and it comes from the earth, and it's also it seems very well, it's elemental because it is an earth, you know, it's earth, so it's mostly an earth thing, so it's very elemental. It doesn't have a chemical smell to it. It's not the safest medium to work in, and that's the only problem, because there is a problem with dust. So one has to be very careful with dust, because ceramic dust is it's very dangerous to inhale. So that being said, if I can keep from inhaling the dust, I find it to be a wonderful medium to work with. I love smushing it up and making it into something. I love it when it's really super wet and sloppy, and I love to process clay when I have leftover things, and I put it in a bucket of water, and then I take it out and let it dry, and I knead it kind of like a loaf of bread until it's the right consistency. I love working with it when it's almost dry and I can actually carve it. I mean, that's my favorite part about it, is the process of working with my hands in the clay. That's my favorite part of it. I paint my clay, most of my clay objects, but I will say I don't love the process of painting. It's more of a dutiful thing. I have to spend almost as much time painting as I do creating something with my hands when I'm building it, because one must take a lot of care in the way that surfaces are treated. But it's much more busy work, because my surfaces are very, if I can pick something up, my surfaces are very complicated. So they involve a lot of cracks and nooks and crannies and holes and tunnels. And so for me, I work on something like a Lazy Susan. And when I'm painting these, I am slowly turning it around, and I'll turn it around for 3 or 4 hours while I'm working on it, go away from it for a half an hour, come back to it, and I will notice that I missed places, and I have to do it again. I have to keep going into it and keep. So to paint a surface like this with a brush is tricky, because it's very hard to get into all the spots. So I do it because it's important, but it's not my favorite part of the process. The results I love. So sometimes I work with forms that I call them wallflowers, and the wallflowers are, again, very textural, flower-like forms, and I put them directly on the wall sometimes, but when I'm showing them for an exhibit, I can't do that usually, so I mount them onto pieces of wood or board or something like that, so that they become more visible. But again, the surface it's very complicated to paint. Even just with a shiny glaze that is clear, it's very hard to get inside every single area and in between every little spot. And then I try to get as close up to the back as I can. So I look at these things very, very carefully. While I'm working, I'm always looking like this and turning things around, and then I'm changing my level so that I'm above it or below it. And every time I move it, I see spaces that I need to address. So over here is some of the ceramics that I've turned into mosaics. This includes some pieces of glass that I did not make myself, as well as tiles that were left over from things that I created. This year was really interesting. I was not allowed to teach ceramics because of the health dangers of working with something like clay with my students in school. So we had no clay for a year. It was the first time I've ever done that. And so what I did is I started to think of alternative things that I could make after school or during my lunch break. And so I started doing drawings. And again, I was really inspired by flowers. And a lot of my flower forms are, they often look like dahlias. Not always, but often they look like dahlias. And this one here is a dahlia. It was a dahlia that I took a photograph of that was sort of drying out. It was a dried dahlia, sort of dying. And so I spent a lot of time trying to get the detail of the petals and the movement of the petals. In the same way that I do that with my wallflowers, I didn't do it quite as abstractly, but so I spent a lot of time with graphite during COVID, and I spent a lot of time recycling my own paper towels, which ultimately ended in these light forms that I created with wire and my paper towels that I used to dry my hands with throughout the year. I would save every one. I had like bags of paper towels. I would dry my hands and I would put them in a bag, and then I would collect them, and then I had hundreds of them. And I would take them apart. They were 2-ply, and I would lay them over wire forms that I had bent and wire mesh that I had left over, and until I created something that I felt like resembled another type of wallflower, I suppose. And then I put lights in the back because I just thought it'd be fun. So essentially, when I begin a sculpture, I start with a slab of clay. I like to use a slab roller, but I use a rolling pin if I'm at home because I don't have one. But when I'm at school or if I'm going to the clay art studios in Watermill, which I rarely do, but I love to have the opportunity to do that, I roll a slab of clay out, and what I'll do is I'll place it over some kind of a form that I create, usually by folding up newspaper and scrunching up newspaper with a little bit of masking tape. I'll make a form, lay the slab over the form, and allow it to get a little bit hard, not too hard. And then what I do is like on this one, I would have like a little dome shape, almost like it looks like an upside down saucer or cup. And then what I'll do is I'll start to create these petals. And I like to work from the outside in because things build up better, because I like to have more height in the center. So I'll start putting petals, and I'll use a Lazy Susan, go around and around until I get to the center, and then do the center. And I often have to go back around to the outside afterwards, but each one I attach with a scoring and slipping with clay, and sometimes they fall off because they are relatively fragile, but only if they get bumped. So they're pretty good. They're pretty good. They're a little tricky to show around because people mishandle them, and the tips break off very easily. But yeah, so the process is usually that, and a flower like that one that I just showed will probably take me approximately 2 hours to make. But I work very fast because I'm obsessed when I work. That's the thing. And I'm an obsessed artist. When I work, I make little pieces, I make them quickly, and I attach them. And it's really important to slow down and step back and look at it and see how it looks before I call it finished, because I tend to want to see what the end is going to be. So I work very fastidiously and around and around and around until I get it done. And it's important that I give myself perspective, a day usually, where I wrap it up and then come back and look at it. And I will ultimately change something about it, because you can't just get it right in one sitting, I don't think. Not usually. Yeah. Mm-hmm. My themes across my work are natural forms. I believe that I'm inspired by the forms in nature, whether they are sea urchins, anemones, flowers, petals, leaves, tendrils. All of my work includes some element of those things. Now, the other thing that it includes is a tremendous amount of those things. So I do a lot of repetition of many petals, many leaves, many tendrils, and they all really do come from my love of nature, but they're not a copy of nature. They're created from nature. Inspires my art as its subject, not as a model, but as a subject. That's key. I am exploring the idea of working in a series of sculptures that could be displayed together in the form of a grid, like a tic-tac-toe, or some kind of a grid. So I've been working on different ideas. Some of them are my drawings that I've created, about 25 9x12 drawings. But I'm also creating now this summer more floral forms that I'm trying to work within a 6-inch square. So I've created a 6-inch tile, and then I'm putting the form on top of the tile, so that each one, my hope is that I could lay them out together and make a little armada of them that are similar in size, but not exactly the same. But they somehow are communicating with each other. I'm looking for some dynamics between one and another, and then one next to it. So that's what I'm working towards. It's a constant thing. I don't think I'll ever be at the end of it. I'll never have done enough to have gotten as good as I want to get. It'll never end. I know that. It's really the process. That's why I love the process. The process is key for me.
So we live together, and we're both artists, and we're both very lucky we're both very fortunate that we have come together, and we have a very special relationship when it comes to sharing our art also, because we never judge, we never feel that we have to judge or criticize. It's always our different opinions are always welcome. And personally for me, I always create for Robin, basically. She's my primary audience, and mostly I run all my creations, I run through her, and it's something I always look forward to, and I get the most balanced, interesting criticism and suggestions that really help me tremendously.
I think that it's a really amazing, fortunate thing when you have what we have with our art, because we can be completely honest with one another, and really in the interest of supporting one another to be the best artists that we can be. When he gives me his opinion, it's honest, and I give him mine, and it's completely honest. And it's hard to get that, really. It's really hard to get that. Sometimes people will say things they don't mean, but we really, our goal is to support one another to keep improving and reaching new levels. And so we do have a really supportive relationship with art. I don't think we have a competitive relationship at all, because our work is very different, and I'm also working as an art educator. So I don't have a full-time career as an artist. So I have other interests too. So I really appreciate the perspective that Aurelio has from the point of view of a professional artist. And then sometimes I think I can help you out with silly little tips just from my educational, domain. And so it's some of the tricks I have with the kids, really, they work here too. So on all levels, it's great. And it's just it's a symbiotic relationship, I think, in terms of the art creating it. I do think so. That's one of the reasons why it's such a wonderful thing to have you in my life.